Hey guys, Troy here. Welcome to Best Settings, the video series where I talk about the best settings for a particular drone. And out on the table today we have the Parrot Anafi. I've added timestamps in the description so you can jump to the part of the video that is most important to you. I define best settings as a combination of three things. So the first being exposure, so having detail in our highlights and in our shadows. The second being natural colors, so getting our white balance correct. And three is having sharp, clear video that's free of artifacts. To achieve this, we will adjust settings in the app and then we'll open our files in our video editing program for the final touches. There's two extra tools that we can purchase to help us get the best quality. A white card. These are inexpensive and it'll help us set our white balance. You can also use a white piece of paper or a white t-shirt, but it has to be completely neutral in color or it's going to throw off our settings. Now these can help smooth out video. The only thing a neutral density filter does is lower your shutter. That's it. It blocks light, so when your shutter opens up to a 60th of a second, the motion of objects look more natural instead of just jumping across the screen. Hopefully that exaggerated example I just showed makes sense. I'll put links in the description to where you can purchase these. Let's jump into the app and change our record settings to 4K. This will give us the clearest video as 1080p has weird processing that adds artificial motion blur. We want to have natural motion blur, which is what our ND filters are for. To give you the most tonal values in our exposure, we're going to select Plog. HDR looks good, but it has a lot of artificial motion blur even at 4K. Plog is going to give us the most flexibility when we color grade too. Next, I'm going to take off and point my camera at the subject I will be filming just to get a reference for what ND filter to use. It looks like in my front yard I'm at about 1600th of a second, so to get to 1/60th of a second, I'll need to remove 4 to 5 stops of light, which would be an ND16 or an ND32. If you're lost by all the terminology I'm using, let me know in the comments if it would be helpful if I made a video only talking about neutral density filters and what stops of lights are. I always set my white balance last because some inexpensive neutral density filters aren't perfectly neutral in color. Anafi doesn't have a mode to let you select a specific temperature, so we'll have to choose a preset. Any of the presets will work because they hold the white balance to a specific value. We don't want to use auto because it's going to change the value as we fly, and this becomes a pain when we process our video. The sunny setting looks best to my eye, but it doesn't need to be exact. We can change it later. We are ready to fly, but before we take off, we have to press record and capture our white card for 10 to 15 seconds at the beginning of the video, so that when we edit it, we will have a reference point for our white balance. So I'm going to use a clip that I took at the park of clouds casting shadows onto houses. I think that's a little bit more interesting than my front yard. I apologize for my screen record quality. It's not the best. You can use any program to edit videos. There's a bunch of good ones out there. I use Vegas Pro 15 to edit mine. All video programs have contrast, saturation adjustments, but the values and those specifics might be a little different. So there's a ton of ways to do this. Basically, we want to add contrast and saturation to get the footage to look natural. From there, we can apply our final color grading to get our desired look. Pro tip number 1, if you've never color graded before, take a sample clip on the natural color profile and then switch to Plog. Put them side by side on the timeline and you can compare what the two look like. The one down here is our natural color profile, and then across the top, this is the footage that we'll be editing. That's our Plog footage. I've adjusted the white balance on our natural profile, and that's where we're going to start with our Plog. We'll click on select white color, and on the eyedropper just click on the white balance card and that will get our tones correct. Next, I like to go into color corrector and then turn the saturation up pretty high. This is just for reference as we're editing. This isn't going to be our final value. Next, I'll go into curves, and in curves we're going to adjust our contrast. So contrast is increasing the highlights and raising the shadows. So on here we have these little arms that you can click and drag around. Pro tip 2, find your video waveform. This is a super helpful tool to help us know if we are clipping or not. Basically what it does is it organizes every vertical line of pixels by brightness. Now you'll see we have some values over 100 and below 0. So this is all clipping. Now to fix that, we're going to pull this down and we're going to lift this up. Just like that. As we're editing, if we go to our timeline and then just click between the two videos, you can see in our waveform, this is our white balance card that I'm holding, right here in the center. And then on the footage we're editing, it's a little bit higher and it's kind of spread out, so you can see the comparison. This down here, this is the concrete in front of me, And then in our Plog footage, this is again a little bit under. So our goal is to get these two as close as possible. A couple of minutes of editing later, and this is the shape that I've come up with. You can see our white balance card here is right around that 70 mark, and then the concrete, this is right around 30, so that's good. Now the only thing is our saturation is way too high. So we're gonna go into the color corrector, and then I'm gonna bring this down a little bit. It looks like 1.4 is the correct amount of saturation for our footage. When we look at these side by side, the colors look pretty similar. However, this blue in the sky is much more natural than this teal kind of look. Next thing that we want to do is go through the whole video and just make sure we don't have anything over 100 and below 0 on our waveform. I found in my video that these clouds were a bit overexposed, so I had to adjust the curves just a little bit. And then if I show you the split screen view, this removes all of the adjustments for the left half of the screen. There's detail here in the highlights and shadows on the clouds. Before, the clouds were overexposed, so I had to add this curve right here just to bring that detail back in. Now the video looks good. It has natural color. There's detail in the highlights and shadows. It's sharp across the screen. I'd say we're done. Now that the clip is properly exposed, if we wanted to, we could apply our final color grade to get the desired mood in our video. I won't go into too much detail on this since it's subjective to each of us how we want our clips to look, but it's ready. Thank you guys for watching. If you found this video helpful, give it a like and don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you next time.